Looks like it's working. All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of our conference and to our first and only virtual workshop today. If you were part of yesterday's virtual sessions, you might remember one takeaway from Maggie's presentation about certainty. Certainty will, and I'm going to quote her, certainty will not be an advantage in the long run, but the clarity will be. And I hope that today's session will bring some clarity on how to navigate AI-driven world with so many possibilities and futures. We also talked about the fact that there is no one set future, there are possibilities, and it's about us, which one we are going to choose. AI is transforming marketing and business at a pace none of us can ignore. With this rapid change comes not just opportunity, but also uncertainty in a lot of noise. Not only uncertainty with our careers, but uncertainty in the blueprints and how we do things and in how we make decisions sometimes. So our goal today is to cut through that, offering you clear foresight, hands-on strategies, and actionable tools that I hope you can take away into your work. I'm thrilled to see so many of you joining us today. That means that yesterday's sessions that certainly resonated with you. And I hope this session will be as engaging and as practical as yesterday's sessions were. So who are going to be hosting those sessions? We have two outstanding experts, Jenny Hwang, a foresight strategist and staff researcher at GitHub, who brings a unique perspective on how AI is redefining roles across industries and what it means to be a developer in a world where coding barriers are failing. If you think marketing jobs are at risk, ask developers. They'll tell you even more about what's happening in their world. Jenny is also teaching user experience design and has a deep background in both tech and brand strategy. And we have Stephen Ghigliotty, co-founder of Me+AI, who has spent his career designing innovative learning programs at the intersection of marketing, education, and artificial intelligence. He trained C-suite leaders for decades and helped shape Canada's first professional marketing certification. Together today, Jenny and Stephen will help us explore where to focus our attention, how to future-proof our roles, and how to lead confidently, even if you're not an AI expert. Thank you so much for being here this morning with us. Get your coffee ready and let's dive in.
Wonderful. Thank you, Max. Hi, everyone. Jenny and I are going to tag team this. We'll take questions at the end, but my session up front is going to be kind of like I'm a little bit of a cheerleader for AI. I'm a hopeless optimist about it, and sometimes that gets me into fights with my old hippie friends who say I'm killing creativity, but that's just the age I guess I'm in. Okay, so we're gonna talk about the future, but like Max was saying, I'm thrilled to be doing this with Jenny. I'm a big fan of GitHub, and she knows marketing inside and out. Like Max was saying, I've been teaching and developing curriculum for, oh my gosh, 15 years now. And Max actually was a student at my course in U of T and took all 3 courses in the certificate in one time. He had to get special permission to do that. So that's my little Max story. But he did really well, and congratulations, Max, on your role now. So we're going to talk about AI, and let's get a little level check first. I'll give you another quick story on my enthusiasm, but I'll get back to this chart in a second. This was created by Claude for me last week. Anyway, so like many of you, I was obsessed with AI when it first got into my hands with the launch of ChatGPT. So that's November of 20, a couple years ago now. And the reason why I'm so passionate about it was an experiment I did a couple months later. If you may remember, at a certain point, ChatGPT allowed you to upload PDFs and train the model on your information. And because of the courseware and the curriculums that I had developed at U of T and the CMA, I had some of my courses, my 12-week courses, as Word files. And this was before they were put into the learning management system. That's how we developed them. So what I did was build a couple large PDFs. I uploaded it to ChatGPT, and then I wrote 6 learner personas based on my teaching history, different personas for different students. And within 30 minutes, ChatGPT was customizing the curriculum and the instructions within the courses I had developed. It was just jaw dropping for me, and I'm a huge passionate supporter of the AI revolution in education. So that's my background, and that's why I'm here talking to you. But let's go back to the chart and see where we are. There's a lot of hype about AI. There's a lot of nervous and anxiety about AI. And this chart that Anthropic put together shows us right now in early 2025, mid 2025, at a trough of disillusionment. And I can sense that. A lot of people are very nervous. There's a lot of people predicting the end of jobs. The job market is pretty tough now. But that's not going to help you really in the long run to just keep that at forefront. AI, the revolution of AI is coming fast, and the models are getting better, and the technologies are stitching together. So if you look at the next level, mid 2025, the slope of enlightenment, and that's where enlightenment could happen here as we see improvements and breakthroughs continuing. But I can understand if you're anxious. And this is a word cloud that was spit out too by AI, showing a lot of worry about job loss, job changing, and that's going to happen for sure. It is already. But if you haven't leaned in yet and you haven't empowered yourself and you haven't opened your mind to using AI to improve your life, your daily life, both professionally and personally, you're getting left behind. I love the Stoics philosophers, and they've become more popular these days, and for a lot of good reasons. If you haven't read Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, it's quite eye-opening, since it was written literally centuries ago. So the takeaway for a lot of the Stoic philosophers is you can only worry about things you can actually change. And we worry about things in our minds that aren't really happening or might not ever happen, and that causes anxiety. And I do think from my conversations over the last year and a half that that is very, very prevalent in the marketing community for good reason. The next couple of slides are from the Marketing AI Institute, which I highly recommend. And the reason I'm bringing these slides in is it gives us a snapshot of where marketers are in their companies with AI. And I brought these slides in so I have some talking points about what you can do for yourself. But these charts show a large poll of marketers and whether their organization is giving them AI training or giving them AI direction. So the first slide, does your organization offer any AI-focused education and training for the marketing teams? So we have a 44% no and a lot in development. So basically 68% of companies don't provide any AI training right now. And that is understandable with the speed of change, but it also is a limiting factor that you can control yourself. Does your organization train marketing, prompt engineering specifically, or any other AI specific skills? Look at the no. And once again, as someone who's developed curriculum and developed training, I think there's a double-edged sword here, and it's very simple to understand. Um, how can you possibly develop training when literally week by week the models and technologies are advancing so dramatically? It's a very challenging situation, both for the organization and for PSIs and professional development in general. And it is really affecting how we learn here. There's a massive disparity between people who are leaning in and pushing these tools and people who are not acting because they just think they've been too late to the game. How concerned are you about AI's impact on your job? So People are hesitant to answer this question, but a lot of people are nervous about what it means for their jobs. And it's understandable. But it's also understandable because you're not understanding the technologies and how they are actually impacting the workplace. Does your marketing team have an AI roadmap or strategy that prioritizes AI use case or projects? This is again a major challenge for brands and marketers in general. I did some very large corporate training activities in the fall, and even with large organizations and large management teams, the disparity between AI awareness and AI literacy is so dramatic that it's very hard for organizations to develop guidelines and roadmaps without a dedicated team. And those dedicated teams simply don't exist for the most part yet. So, long term, and this makes people nervous too, human work displacement, societal level risk. Society will be changing, but if you don't get a handle on it or lean in and find ways to use these tools in your personal and professional life, you will be left behind and more anxious. So it can be a challenging time, but also I have reason for you to be optimistic. If you get engaged now, you'll feel better. There's two ways to learn. There's the cognitive domain of learning, which is what we traditionally call learning. That's algebra and studying and spelling and physics. And then there's the affective domain of learning, and um, that's what a lot of people call soft skills. But honestly, soft skills are not, you cannot teach soft skills. You only teach the effective learning by experiencing it. For example, if you wanted to be a better public speaker, you're better off taking an improv class to have the experience, not to listen to someone else tell you how to lay out your slides. So the tools are only going to get better, they're only going to get faster, they're only going to get more accurate. And it's understandable if you think you're an imposter in the AI world. Even experts feel this way. Again, the technologies are moving so quickly and they're so profoundly magical in some ways that people do feel like imposters. And cutting and pasting directly from AI is not the way to do it either. How do you determine hype from reality? It's very, very hard. And again, the way I'm going to recommend that you do that is by getting your hands dirty and using the tools. Anxiety and fear are keeping too many from becoming AI literate. They really are. Okay, so um, you can become AI literate. You really can. There are basics. There are basic way to build skills, and there's basic way to apply it to your work. And then you can master these tools. So, for example, Google and most other of the major tech companies have wonderful free online starter courses to understand the breakthroughs that enable the AI revolution. Um, those tools, the way models have been trained, the breakthrough in transformer technology, the actual way that neural networks have been trained to become artificially intelligent. They're very simple courses. They're almost all free. I highly encourage you to take one or two or three of them, and they lead to a more deep progression. And that's an important way to learn about AI. If you understand how models are trained, you'll understand the copyright issues and the arguments about that. If you understand how models are trained, you'll understand private models and RAG and different kinds of technologies that allow these models to be used in the business sense. Okay, so let's get to actual recommendations. How to actually get your hands dirty and learn on your own. Use multiple LLMs and compare the results. Don't use just one. Many marketers I know just get using one. Claude, for example, is much better at marketing copy in general. Um, and then also learn how to use text to image and text to video generators. For a very long time, they were making errors and they were the butt of jokes. Seven fingers, three toes, and awkward limbs. Dramatic breakthroughs both in still and video generation within the last 6 months. VO is astonishing. The video tools are becoming better and better. And someone that I interviewed for our community had used 41 models to create a digital remake using AI of the Planet of the Apes movies. So keep a library of your prompts. There's different ways to do this. There's different worksheets, and then use meta approaches to prompting. Have the models analyze your prompts, write the prompts for you, to edit and rewrite your prompts, and also use the tools and advancement that a lot of people are not keeping up with in terms of launching. Deep research is now live on most models. There are different interfaces for editing, Canvas and ChatGPT. The way to use these tools is to get your hands dirty and see where your mind takes you. Learn about the variations of different models. There are reasoning models, there are mini models, there are vocal apps and interactions with the models using your phones. Use all of these tools. The more you use them, the more you'll understand the implications in your daily life and your professional life. Also, now with AI functionality pushed through productivity apps, Word, PowerPoint, Canva, Gemini is in many of the Office apps. They're good, they're bad, they work, they don't work, but you're not going to know how they can improve your productivity within the workplace without trying them. And then also, use AI for personal purposes. I know people are concerned about privacy. I understand that, and I would never share, information that you're not willing to have copied in some ways. But let me tell you a story, a use case here, if you were. One of my friends has a very challenging anemic disorder. It's complex. And she was anxious. Treatment required a long hospital stay and transfusions. It was a very complex disease, and she used ChatGPT in detail to help her get through this. And she uploaded her test results, her blood tests, her doctor's recommendations, and she's doing so much better now. But that knowledge, that skill set, that application to her personal life would have never been the same level of richness without the AI inputs. And you know how it is when you see a doctor, you can barely get them to spend a few minutes with you. So I had a long talk with her yesterday, and she was describing to me just how much information she shared with ChatGPT, and it was intensely detailed. And yes, the results can be questionable, but you need to check sources for all models anyway. So she actually had her doctors interact with the model with ChatGPT, and it was quite revealing because even the doctors were impressed by the level of output from these models. So there is an example, a really intimate example of using AI in your personal life that wouldn't have been possible even just a year or so ago. Okay. In terms of learning and learning more about the details, prompt engineering gets laughed at in some ways now because it was offered in university courses. But prompting and prompt engineering is now quite a few guides have been released. Anthropic has released one, and also this is the Google prompt engineering one. There's a link at the bottom to download it. It's a real excellent reference. It really is. And it gives a great frame of reference for many use cases in prompting, and also meta prompting or prompt engineering using different tools. If you haven't used Notebook LLM, you absolutely should. This is me just playing around with it a couple of weeks ago. I uploaded my resume into it, but this is the Google application that allows you to create those Southern California podcasty audio bits that everyone was raving about. I think it's a little over a year old. But it's an amazing tool, and it's much more powerful than just the podcast generation, although that is really, really well done. I used it in multiple sessions for training in corporate, and almost universally, the audiences were stunned at it. So you can upload any documents to generate this audio podcast, but you can also literally use it like a notebook. It can summarize your updates. You can create a study guide out of it. You can put a timeline together, briefings. It generates profoundly usable content. And in many ways, another important part of AI is the ability to democratize information and share it in different ways. For many people, and this is from my teaching background, people learn in different ways. People learn through listening. People learn through in-person training. People learn one-to-one in different ways. Everyone learns in a different way, and to have complex information summarized and generates in a podcast accessible, easy audio way, relaxing, is really, really eye-opening for a lot of people. I see someone commenting about Manus AI too, another model to test and use. That's the reasoning, the advanced reasoning model from China. So anyway, don't just get stuck on one model and one input-output Google approach. That's not the way to use these AI tools, and it'll become increasingly clear to you as you use different tools for different purposes. Okay, so let's jump to the obligatory techie chart here. So, and I'm really going to hang on this just for a bit because there's other sessions in the AMA's Leadership Week with talking about agentic design and agents. It's a very murky area for many ways because the definition of agents aren't even really clear. But what I put this slide in for is actually a way for you to kind of get your head around the next level of AI development, which is agents and agentic design. So if you think of the models and the way you use models a year and a half ago or a year ago, very much input, output, one model at a time, query, prompt, output, saving, that sort of thing. Right now, what's happening is these models don't have a way to communicate to each other in long-term reasoning or long-term task solving. And what's happening now are protocols are being written to enable the models to work together in different phases to accomplish much more complex tasks. And I've seen this at a couple hackathons that were just astonishing, where computer engineers are giving Perplexity like a big research project. And then out of Perplexity comes a data dump where the models actually work together to analyze the problem it's trying to solve. And then we'll model products, actual mobile apps, computer programs, and build them and write the code for them. So the reason this slide is here is so that you don't necessarily have to start developing products yourself. But the way that the technology is evolving, it's very easy to see how marketers could end up developing products directly for brands and for campaigns even. The quality of data is important, but at the same time, these agentic designs will allow much more complex problem solving and deeper interaction and deeper task solving. Okay, so I just took the sessions I've done for the last year and have them put a YouTube on them. You're more than welcome to check it out. I personally have spent just about a year and a half now talking to marketers from all shapes and sizes, agency presidents, students, recent graduates, to get an understanding of where everyone is, and that's informed my session here. So I'm going to sum up my section of the talk by some recommendations for working marketers or young marketers. Try and become a champion for AI within your organization. We need more champions. We need more champions on the management side. We need more champions on the entry-level side as well. Share your resources. Talk about AI literacy with your colleagues. You're going to find a whole spectrum of interest and enthusiasm. But if you become a champion, you'll be amazed at the level of conversations that will be uplifted. Continue to learn more about advanced prompting. Use deep research for competitive analysis. When I was on the client side, I always did competitive analysis, and it was me and endless hours in Google and building ugly documents in Word and then trying to make them pretty in PowerPoint. And it would take me a week, and I would love it. But now with deep research, you can get a 14, 15, 18 page amazing draft of a competitive analysis for your brand, for your vendors, for your competitors, and also, use the models to develop personas for your customers. Figure out who is your customer, who is not your customer. Really push the prompts to analyze them and get details. They might unearth details you would not seen before. Engage your clients in how AI is being used within their organizations. I've done this for about a year now, talking to different clients and agency presidents. It's all over the board. Some clients don't want to hear the term AI. Some clients think, why is my bill so high if you're using AI? Shouldn't, and the issue of slop and copyright. Find out what your clients are thinking about AI, and engage them. There are great newsletters and lots of experts, but also be careful with who you listen to and who's trying to sell you things about AI. There is a lot of hucksters out there, but there's also a lot of wonderful writers. Ethan Mollick. There's some brilliant people on Twitter as well. And because it's moving so fast, and if you can find the time to pay attention, you'll be less anxious about the subject. Learn, test, and use new AI tools for image. I brought this up before, but play around with them now. Use them for comps. Use them to mark up product shots. Just playing around with them, even if you're not a creative, will give you a sense of the capability and power of these tools. And once again, they become dramatically better in the next 6 months. Okay, that's it for me. I'm going to hand over to Jenny, and we'll do the second half of our session. We're going to do some Q&A. I'm looking at the questions now. We'll come back. I'll come back at the end and answer some questions. All right. Thank you all so much. Jenny, I'm going to stop sharing.
Thanks, Stephen. All right. Okay. Hi, everyone. I feel free to keep the questions coming in the chat, but I won't be checking it until after, so just heads up there. So now, thanks to Stephen, you are now equipped with some resources and tools to familiarize yourself with the AI tools and hopefully increase your AI literacy. To build upon that, I want to talk to you about not just being prepared for the future with AI, but how you can shape our preferred future of marketing with AI. And today's session will be very participatory, so be prepared to unmute yourself, and we're going to workshop together as a group, ideate and brainstorm. It's going to be really fun, so get ready. So did you know that 94% of organizations are using AI to prepare or execute marketing already? This really shows how prevalent and valuable AI has become for marketers in a really short period of time. However, at the same time, nearly 60% of marketers fear that AI could replace their roles in the foreseeable future. We heard this from Stephen's presentation as well. And maybe some of you also believe that this is where the future is headed, and maybe you're also feeling a little anxious, which is totally fair. And this may be a plausible future, but what if we stop looking at the one future and consider the possibilities of multiple futures? What do we mean by that? Today, we're going to be discussing the multiple future scenarios using a framework from strategic foresight. And this is a discipline that utilizes futures thinking methods and frameworks to identify signals and analyze emerging trends and evaluate potential outcomes to really future-proof our product and services. Traditional strategic planning, often they end up being not very useful because organizations tend to think strategy in a very singular thing with a very linear timeline. And that's not how you want to think about the future. And the purpose is not to pinpoint the exact future events. So I'm sorry to disappoint you if you thought you're going to be able to walk out with 100% certainty. If you remember that from Maggie's presentation as well, and prediction. So if you want to leave, I understand, but I promise you there's still valuable things to get out of it without that 100% certainty. Rather, the purpose is to highlight these large forces that push the future in different directions. What could those forces be? And this is how organizations and you can become the leaders that drive the future change versus those who merely react. Um, so basically, you need to know all the possible ways that the future may be headed in order to know how to strategize and act going forward. And this is the mindset that I want you to embody today as we discuss the future of marketing with AI. So, how do we start exploring this future? So, one of the ways is through horizon scanning. And this is the use of information about events and trends and relationships in an organization's external environment, which is leveraged to plan an organization's future course of actions. And one of the framework is called STEEP-V, and this is an acronym that stands for social, technology, economy, environmental, political, and values. What does that mean? It means that there's different trends in all aspects of our lives that may impact our particular topic and our particular industry, right? So let me walk you through an example of what these trends could look like. So last year, I ran a workshop on the future of software development with AI, what coding or what it means to code with AI in the future. And in order to understand this future directions, we needed to dive into the trends of today that hinted at that future. So, for example, this environmental trend was called AI is both hurting and saving the environment. So, while many organizations are leveraging the power of AI to really improve how we track, measure, and optimize the environmental footprint, the immense, CO2 footprint required to actually run these LLMs may cancel out any positive impact. Related to this, ESG requirements impact how we build out our AI models, which models will actually succeed if it has to meet certain requirements. How will the control over our energy to power these large databases impact our future? How much control will be shifted to the governing body versus tech companies when it comes to regulations? So you might think, why would an environmental trend matter for marketing, like unless you work specifically on sustainability marketing. But if you really think about it, these things will all impact our industry, and that's where the trends come from. Another trend from our future of coding with AI was called it's a political trend. When big tech drives AI regulation, is it a story of ethics or dominance? So the push for pre-approval from governing bodies for like a licensing AI model could result in a safer ethical development, but could also threaten your competition and stifle innovation, giving greater control to those few who are currently in power, right? So we're looking for these signals through headlines, news articles, cultural discussions, even something silly as like TikTok trends, because it can be really a weak or a strong trend, but a hint of something is brewing up here. And I don't know quite what it is, but I think it might mean something. And that is what we're trying to look for. And this is another trend called rage against the machine. The fear around AI job takeover, including developer roles, is creating some tension between the actual developers and the C-suites or the actual organization when it comes to AI adoption. And what you're noticing here is the signals hint at what's actually happening, what we're seeing, but what's really important are the implications. So what does this mean for our business? What does this mean for our society? What does this mean for our market? So that's what we want you to think about, is not just, okay, here's what's going on, but so what? And that is the purpose of the trends as well. So what I want to do today is, again, I said this is going to be like a workshop participatory format. I want us to think about some STEEP-V trends you can think about that's relevant when we think about the future of marketing with AI. So, think about, okay, what's going on socially, technology space, economy, ecological or environmental, political or values of our society. Let's think about some signals that are hinting at something. What this might mean for our business. So I'm going to open up the floor, and this can be like really small. This is like, you don't have to be like, oh, this was researched by an academic and I know 100% what's going on. Just like something weak is fine, but let's like unmute yourself. Feel free to speak up, or you can type it in the chat as well. So the use of AI to reduce the need for human workers, right? So what does that mean for when it comes to marketing? Not just, like marketing that we might lose our jobs, but beyond that, like other implications on how we market, how we advertise, how we sell. So maybe think of it that way. Feel free to unmute yourself or type it in the chat if you have some ideas. Anyone noticing anything interesting that they've been seeing? The dilution of brand authenticity in a world of programmatic content. Oh, that's interesting. Chris, do you mind unmuting yourself and just kind of like expanding a little bit on that?
Yeah, for sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, I would say I think the need to reduce costs as much as possible and figure out how to programmatically create content at scale is leading to a lot of brands leaving their brand voice, tone, product guidelines, etc., up to the AI, opposed to having some sort of POV or thought process or thought leadership on a specific topic, all for the sake of expanding as quickly as they can. Just because they're used to $1 in, $3 out, that working dollars versus non-working dollars is becoming even more contentious issue. So by leveraging all those technologies, you're diluting kind of what you stand for, who you are, and who your ICP is, just for the sake of spending dollars more efficiently, if that makes sense.
That totally makes sense. Yeah, so maybe like short term, there's a lot of that dollar saved short-term games, but long term, are you losing that important brand authenticity as you talked about?
Exactly.
Yeah, really good point. The replacement of Google as a search engine by Gen I, Leah. Yeah, Leah, so I think you're referring to how something like a ChatGPT is going to be like the ad search, like platform versus Google or things like that. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, totally. So what does that mean for us marketers? We're so used to buying ads for Google and Google ad spend and Facebook, and what does this new world look like? Really good point. Armand, the exacerbation of AI as it affects the depression in hiring amongst corporations, as it offers buffers for companies hoping to avoid hiring potentially long enough for AI to outright replace the need for more workers. Yes. So Armin, what do you think that means for marketers?
I think that marketers are perhaps both more and less at risk than the average worker, because while marketing on one side is a lot of like programmatic work, a lot of assessing sort of demographics and figuring that out, another half of marketing is the sort of human front facing work, being able to talk to people, being able to convince others of ideas. And so in that way, I think that AI will allow people to sort of fill in the gaps on either end. Like if you're very good at, say, like demography and especially if you're engaged with like neural networks as a way of determining demographics from unstructured data, you can like use AI to do the people stuff that you're not good at, and vice versa if you're more of a people person. And so, in essence, one marketer could count for two in some cases, which, if you're independent, is great because it enables you to be an independent force, be a self-starter. But in a corporate setting, it's like, oh, we don't have like a front-facing guy. That's okay. We do text anyway. We'll just use Claude at scale. Or if you're like, oh, well, I know we don't have a lot of tech people, but like Codex just came out and that seems to do fine. It it can allow it sort of taffy pulls your workforce in a way that is great internally, but also it presents questions of like, will everyone have to be their own marketing agency because no marketing agency wants to bother hiring anyone anymore?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah, that's interesting for us to ponder. Thank you. So we have some other comments like, well, will AI actually just replace it and there's no real voices anymore? The future of websites and digital platforms to reach. How do we think about that? Um, yeah, the issue and Andrew is saying is that we want to be seen as being authentic, but then embrace technology AI to reduce the cost. So it's like, how do we, there's that friction point here, which is a really interesting and thinking about the futures, that friction of which way could it go, that is what makes our futures thinking very interesting. So hone in onto that. So we're going to have more options to discuss going in through it. So I love how much engagement there is going on. The next section is going to be really fun. So now that you understand some trends, we are ready for scenarios. So it's important that we think deeply and creatively about the future, or else we run the risk of being surprised or unprepared. And the future is uncertain, so we must prepare for multiple plausible futures. And this is where scenarios really come in. What are scenarios? So they're used to assist stakeholders in expanding their mental models, moving beyond what we consider just that one official future, to consider multiple possible future worlds. And they should tell a plausible yet very provocative stories about the future. Some of you will be maybe familiar with some of the scenarios from the keynote with Maggie yesterday from the virtual session. So it's similar to that, but today we're going to work together as an exercise to come up with the scenarios together. So it's going to be really fun. So remember the trends that we were just talking about? And I think even in our discussion, we're realizing, hey, some of these trends seem like really big, like these trends are impacting other trends. And it's more than just like a one-off. So these are considered drivers. They're the big driving forces of our world that could really push the world in one direction or the other, right? So I feel like something about what you said here about the drive for authenticity versus cost savings. Like, I think those are really interesting drivers. Like, what's going to happen? And so and there could be multiple drivers, and you want to identify your key drivers, and you want to choose ones that have highest impact on how the world could go, as well as greatest uncertainty. You don't want to choose a driver that you're like, oh yeah, well, it's definitely going to go this way. It's like, it could go either way. I'm not quite sure. And you're going to pair these two drivers together to form the basis of possible scenarios to generate 4 different possibilities. So here in this example, we have governance and economic health as the big drivers for, let's say, a topic of future of work. So, in this world, the governance, we could have more governance or less, or we could have a really strong economy or really low economy, and we're not really sure, really weak economy, or we're not really sure. So scenario 1 could be, okay, in this world, in this future scenario, we have really strong government involvement, but their economy is really weak. What could that world look like? What are some implications? But the world could go the other way, where we have really strong economy but more government. Or the world could go strong economy or less government and weak economy. So you see how, depending on how the drivers are pulled, there's so many different ways our futures could be going, and we want to be thinking about all the different potential scenarios. Here's an example from a session I ran with people from IBM with their data analytics team back in 2019, and we were looking out to 2030, I believe. So you can look into futures to 5, 10 years, whatever that makes sense for your organization. With AI, because it's moving so quickly, I do recommend choosing like a shorter time frame, like 3 to 5 years, because the change is coming so much faster than we think. So here, the team chose their driver as revolutionary paradigm change AI or incremental, not super like paradigm shifting AI change. I would say we're still at a level of like, AI is really useful, but it hasn't quite yet changed the paradigm of how we live our lives. We might get there, but we're not quite there. But some will argue that we'll never reach there, right? So that's kind of like a driver. And this group chose, okay, your personal data is all owned by individuals, or it's all controlled by the government. That's the other driver. So one way you can come up with scenarios, and you don't have to do this, is like metaphors or cultural common references like movies, because it can help kind of set the ground, set the scene for a lot of people who are familiar with it. So here, when they thought about this world, this scenario number 2, where AI is truly revolutionary, and the ownership of data is very controlled by the individuals, they imagine the world like the movie like Her, right? It's deep but narrow insights into your personal data, a slower pace of innovation, real drivers will be masked because analytics won't have access to all the data it needs, right? Because this is on the framing with the future of data analytics. On the other hand, if there's revolutionary AI, but your government or the corporation really control your data, they imagine a world like Minority Report, right? So no privacy, less freedom, more discrimination, but maybe more imaginative products. And most importantly, we're thinking about, so what are the opportunities or risks that are posed to, business analytics or the future of analytics? What does this mean? How do we pivot, and what are strategies that we can think about to succeed in all of these worlds? So we're going to do this exercise together quickly. And for our purposes today, I've just pre-selected 2 drivers, but of course, these are not, the drivers. These might not even be the best drivers, and these come through conversations about our trend. But I chose one, AI regulation. AI is really controlled by the government, or it's controlled by that tech private corporations. Right now, there's not a lot of regulations because it's so new, and it's the big corps, the private techs that are owning it, but governments are trying to intervene and trying to set grounds of like, how will this go? That's a driver of uncertainty. Another driver is creativity through AI. What will happen to the idea of creativity in our near future with AI? I think creativity and marketing really go hand in hand. That's what I love about marketing. And I think we also discussed like authenticity, unique voices already, right? And will AI actually, flourish our creativity because it's adding so many new things and helping us think of new things that we haven't thought about before? Or is it all just going to generate the same thing and it's going to stifle creativity and innovation and new ways of looking at things? Like what way will creativity go? So as a group, I want to think about some ideas of what each scenario may look like. It's both really art and science, meaning you're not just making this up out of thin air, but it's grounded in some signals and trends. But like I said, they can be some weak signals and trends, but it's brewing of something, right? Because if it's super mainstream, which is also fine, then it's really obvious that it's going that way. So sometimes it's like, okay, there's something here. I think something's happening in this part of the world, but maybe not at this part of the world yet. That's also okay. So you want to use your imagination, but grounded on some truth. So we're going to look at these scenarios. Okay. So scenario 1, Max, Stephen, and I put in some examples of what this world could look like, but this is not it, or this is not the total. I want to hear from you what this world could look like. So in this scenario 1, where AI is controlled by the government, and AI really actually flourishes our creativity, what could that world look like? Maybe there's, high AI literacy is achieved through government regulation around transparency. Maybe governments making sure human oversight is really maintained. Maybe there's anti-monopoly of AI, so there's a lot of different startups coming up with new ideas. Maybe there'll be a lot of new innovative channels that we haven't even thought about yet, or storytelling through AI that really can aid the creativity of our marketers in the industry. And because these regulation setting is really important, marketers who participate early on in that regulation drafting, maybe they're the ones who are going to win because they can set the regulation in a way that benefits them, perhaps. So these are some initial thoughts. I would love to hear from the group what this world might look like, what this would mean for the industry of marketing. Feel free to, Arman, go ahead.
Yeah, so the way, like, this is sort of the highest potential outcome here, but like AI as public good almost, like in the same way that we have public libraries, there could be like a public endpoint for AI that is either anonymized to the entire civil population or just outright not stored off site, where like I don't know if you put your driver's license in, but like you as a citizen can just use this like AI service that is just like fully tax subsidized or like locally subsidized by your region, and just like a library card, you can just access AI and use it in your day to day from this joint endpoint.
And why do you think that's particularly possible in this world?
Well, it's already assuming that the government can like wrench control of AI back from the corporations, which is already kind of a big ask. And so in that situation, if the government has enough like force of will and mandate to do that, I don't see why they wouldn't just take what they've taken and give it to everyone. And like maybe that's Canadians are more used to that with things like crown corporations, and maybe that's insane to think about in America. But it's like, if we're already accepting that, like, that they could possibly steer this ship, this could be a possibility too.
Yeah, that makes sense. And do you think that's an advantage for our marketers, or no, or are there implications?
I think it's an advantage for the individual marketer. This is sort of related to what I said earlier, where at the small scale means that every individual marketer has access to the same baseline tools, and thus it sort of evens the playing field. But it also means that, like, marketers would have to offer something better than just a person going to ChatGPT and saying, like, hey, what's our brand philosophy? What should we do here? Like, you have to it would actually emphasize humanity more for marketers, because if everyone has access to the same AI, suddenly your humanity is all that defines you within the marketing space.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Muhana, do you want to share your thoughts?
Yeah, actually, I just want to add to that maybe it would be see how this idea would look like. I've recently moved from Dubai, from the UAE, and the UAE now are actually they are just going through the steps to offer ChatGPT free of charge for everyone who is living, the residents in the UAE. So this is where actually the government is taking steps towards giving access to LLMs and AI, and we might be able to see what this impact actually. So they would be providing access to ChatGPT Pro, just to be exact, because it's available. So without this monthly subscription, and this might just open up many doors for people who did not know much about it, who did not try it because of like the cost, or because they did not know. And this just will encourage having this trend to actually have higher adoption. So this is on the previous point. Nevertheless, like maybe one scenario is.
I think we lost. Were you done speaking, or did we lose you? Oh, Muhana, we can't hear you, so feel free to speak back up once you have
All
your...
right. Am I audible now?
Oh, yes, you're good now.
Apologies. All right. So a scenario that I have in mind for this is having some kind of regulations that will give like the especially in the area of media on like how do we license the work that people are doing through like prompt engineering, or like so the work that like people are putting into creativity, if that is that can be licensed. So this is an area where we would be able to point like a good flourishing creativity plus um, government interference to help this.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you for sharing that. And then I think, Janice, you also wrote, yes, setting standards for all business to operate could be helpful, but if the government overreaches too much, is it going to stifle protecting the populace, which could conflict with tech innovation? Right, which I think goes into our next scenario is, so in this scenario, AI is still controlled by government, but AI actually stifles creativity. AI progresses slowly due to government regulations. It's using it to automate tedious tasks, but maybe can't actually like disrupt or innovate industries, because creativity is actually not happening, and there's tight regulations. Maybe marketers will have to work within really like strict AI regulations in order to reach the audience. Maybe like for me, when I think of, I used to work a little bit with like pharma advertising, and I remember how difficult it was in Canada, at least, to like work within those regulations. So I don't know, maybe like this is the type of stuff that could happen in this controlled by the government, but the creativity is stifling. Anyone else have thoughts about what this world could look like, what some implications might be, what might happen in this world? Feel free to type or unmute or raise your hand. We don't want to think about the sad world. Go ahead, Armand.
No, sorry. Was someone else going to talk? I didn't want to.
No, I think you're good. Please share.
Okay. Yeah. Well, like basically in this situation, what we're assuming is that the government doesn't so much give AI to the people as it does take AI from the people, right? Like it again, it assumes a trajectory shift of like the government really cracks down on AI use cases, stopping it from being developed and stopping it from being used. And so, like, I guess that's kind of a cop out where it's like, oh, AI inherently boosts creativity. So the only way AI could be stifling creativity is if it's like heavily regulated to the point where only like government contractors and or like people willing to pay exorbitant fees can do it. This is kind of the thing that people fear with regards to like attempts to regulate AI in the creative space, where the best they'll end up doing is creating a situation where the average person can't use AI to like create stuff at home, but like Disney could train off their own models and do their thing, or Spotify could license it all and do their thing. And that's sort of the fear, is that AI sort of like segregates creativity by who's allowed to use it and who's not.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And the intention could be good, right?
Uh-huh.
Just like the pharma example I use, like, I think regulation, the intention could be good, but how they go about it, to your point, could result in this. And how they go about it will differentiate if we go to scenario 1 or scenario 2, I think.
Yeah. I my own biases show, obviously. Like I can't imagine a world where AI like inherently makes people less creative, so much as like AI's use and where it's used can limit the creativity it can allow for.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry, let me go back to now. The government isn't really creating anything. The only thing they can do is restrict our usage. Interesting. All right. So scenario 3. So this time AI is controlled by the private tech, which I think current trajectory, if there isn't a big government regulation, this could be happen. But in this world, AI stifles creativity, which, David doesn't think it's possible, but maybe it could be. So silent organizations working in closed environment, right? So, everyone owns their own and there's no open source. Maybe I think people were talking about this already. With so much automation and using AI to generate marketing work, maybe there will be high quality work, but maybe they'll be forgettable as well, because they're all going to be really similar and indistinguishable, because we're all kind of generating the similar kind of high quality work that is fed on this LLM with similar results coming out of it. I wonder in this world if, yeah, majority of creative work will be done through AI, and it's gonna be good enough, it's gonna serve its job. But I wonder if small percentage of work that's truly authentically produced by women will still be highly coveted. Like, what I'm thinking about is how we think about artisanal craft today. Before the Industrial Revolution, we had all these craftsmen, right? And with the Industrial Revolution, they were very upset. They lost their jobs. And yeah, we no longer make everyday use things through artisanal craftsmen. It's factories, but it doesn't mean we lost the value for it. It's in small quantity. It's actually much more expensive. It's considered artisanal. So I wonder if that's just the market gets smaller, but it's still valued in different ways, or some thinkings that I've had. But what do we think as a group? What do we think this world is? Armand thinks it'll be a race to the bottom. Everyone would try to make the most, the fastest, the cheapest, and it would just become, if not outright slob, then a slurry and smear that isn't really differentiated as an individual product, right? So I think that is definitely a possibility. Anyone else have thoughts on that? Or anyone want to add how we stop the world from going this way if we're concerned that if it's going to be a race to the bottom? Or if anyone would say, I don't think it's going to be a race to the bottom, I think there'll be work around it. Share your thoughts.
I jump in. Sorry, I joined late. I'm seeing AI in, I have a conference, Digital Day Camp, and we have, I had Tim Ringle last year speak, who is the CEO of a small but pretty mighty holdco with 12 agencies across the US and about 3 in Canada. And I think on the creative side, he's very concerned about the legal implications, right? So using AI to do creative, which is tapping into open source, and then legally, are you even allowed to do that? Whether it's written work or creative work, I think that's going to be a challenge. Media buying on the other side, placing the creative, by the group, like Group M has made a mandate that within, I think it's 2 years, all media buying is going to be AI. Challenge with that, I think, is going to be like, you've got AI deciding audience choices, media choices, are they diverse enough, etc. So I think there's I think the biggest challenge on the creative side is going to be, to what Armin said, on the quality side, but really on the legals. I think legals are going to be, AI's already paid off. Huge, the Canadian government, not government, sorry, the Canadian media conglomerates have sued it, ChatGPT with OpenAI for like $1 billion. And they have paid US media companies these type of fees. Problem is, an advertiser goes in or a creative agency goes in and starts using it and then gets hit with a lawsuit, less likely to be able to pay those type of legal fees. So it's just, these are, I think, concerns that have to be addressed.
That's a really good point. Yeah. And, I think if we look at trends, those legal trends would also come up. So that's very interesting. I think we're also hearing Janice, I half agree with Armand, still be demand for creative work, highly artisanal and curated. Like people want Temu, but we're also going to have Hermes, both still relevant due to user demands. But yeah, that's a really good point. I think a massive pushback for artisanal content among the AI poor private sector. That'd be interesting. Angie talks about 3 is a possibility. Could be slurry it up, as Armand says, but maybe that's the way to decrease some of the fear around AI. Yeah. And we have, Mohamed saying a handful of model vendors patent lucrative prompt chains and style transfer algorithms. SMB agencies can afford license fees, so only mega brands deploy premium photorealistic campaigns. Everyone else settles for bland stock assets. I really think that could be a potential future. And I think, how we win or how our organizations win is like, okay, then like what innovations or what strategies can we come up with so that this doesn't become the future, or in this future there's like a creative way for SMBs to survive or for you to service the SMB agencies that are doing this, or right. So like I want us to all be thinking about that as we discuss some of these scenarios. And last but not least, so AI is still controlled by private tech here, but it manages to flourish as creativity. So maybe the lack of regulation from the government actually allows private organizations to run wild, coming up with new disruptive solutions for marketers to leverage and advertise and market in new creative ways. However, I think unchecked AI solutions could create really moral and ethical risks for marketers. And to David's earlier point, maybe now legal considerations as well, potentially higher advertising costs for marketers if the tech companies that own the AI space really charge like monopolized premiums. We know like Facebook ads got so much more expensive over the like last few years as well. So it's like, okay, like if OpenAI really just owns this space, is it going to be extremely expensive for us to advertise? Are they going to have all the say? Yeah, what else might be true in this world, or feel free to challenge my thoughts around this world as well, or add to it. Feel free to unmute or share in the chat.
I guess this might sound a bit overly pithy, but like an expensive gold rush, like there's a barrier to entry, but if you can cross that barrier, you enter this world of like really enabled creativity where it might sort of provoke marketers to sort of silo up themselves into larger brands and larger conglomerates to afford the activation cost of getting into AI tools.
Yeah, I love the gold rush metaphor you're using, because I imagine this like wild west of opportunities, but also like it's crazy and no rules out there, and you're like, you can just shoot someone if you want to, but you can get rich.
Yeah, it would turn into a really sort of like jungle out there, but it would definitely, on the consumer end at least, produce some pretty interesting marketing material.
For sure.
I'd like to jump in here just because I'm compelled to. I also think that gold rush mentality is for the brands who have advanced AI capabilities inside, but also have good primary data from their customers. If that primary data is good, And that's a big challenge. I had a couple of conversations with senior marketers lately, and these are media buyers, and they were telling me that a lot of the data that brands think they have that are quality is not. Anyway, the brands with the quality data and internal, like primary data, so they know their customers well, will be able to put compelling products and with insights from the marketing team. So I think that's something we should look forward to as well.
For sure, Stephen, something to think about as we build towards that strategy in the future. Anyone else about our last scenario before we move forward? All right, so we've had some great discussions and thoughts around it. So please do continue this within your org, within each other when you're networking. This is just the beginning. So, all right, up next is, it's one thing to feel more confident about where the possibilities may be. What's more critical is how to be best prepared for it. And this is done through a method called wind tunneling. And wind tunneling is a process of testing the viability of our strategies for each of our scenarios, right? So we know our worlds. Now we got to think about the strategies. So how do we succeed? How do we, come out on top in these worlds? And you want to test them across the 4 scenarios we just created. So, for instance, if we have strategies on one axis and scenarios on the other, and how would our strategy called withdraw do in the world of ostrich? How would it do in the scenario of lame duck? How would it do in this scenario, right? This way, you can have a sense of not just, one strategy for one future, but okay, like what are different ways we can go about it, all these different futures. And you can evaluate the strategies using, a lot of different criteria. That's up to you. But some of the common ones I'm going to talk about would be, financial performance. Of course, we live in a capitalist world and money matters. Risk performance. How risky would this be? Strategic fit. Like, what is our organization's current strategy? What is my team's current strategy, and does it fit well with that? Or do we have to start an entire new business because we're like, oh my God, our current business is just so different from the strategies that we're coming up with and how well they would do. And cultural fit, like, does this make sense with what our culture stands for? Doesn't mean you can't switch, but it's much harder to take on a strategy where there's less cultural fit. So I know we haven't, usually this takes time and time to work, but based on some of the discussions we've had, some of the concerns about the world, implications about the world, anyone have any initial thoughts about a potential strategy? I think what Stephen, you talked about, data ownership or deep data ownership or access to data ownership. I think that is an area of strategy that we can definitely think about. Any other areas, feel free to unmute yourself or share in the chat. We talked about this, creating the artisanal world, or is it a divide between who has money and who doesn't? What do you think?
I'm sorry, are you asking for new criteria for how we evaluate our strategies in each scenario?
No, I'm asking for a potential strategy that would do well in some of these worlds scenarios that we talked about, or all the scenarios. What do we think? What are the implications we think about?
Well, sort of again, riffing off of the gold rush idea, selling, it sort of making money selling shovels. In basically every situation that's outside from the government regulates it and stifles creativity, people are gonna need someone to guide them through this process. What tools do I use? What websites do I use? Who can I trust my information? And sort of being a liaison for businesses or even consumers trying to get it into the marketing scape, being that sort of bridge of okay, here's what you can do, here's what you can pay for, even in regulation, but enabling creativity. Here's how you file your forms to get advanced API access. Here's what the government channels allow for. There's always going to be someone who needs marketing consultations specifically with regards to how AI can and can't be used in this space.
Yeah, so strategy is playing that guidance shovel role, as you were saying. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Janice, feel free to speak up.
Hi. This is a fascinating discussion because while I agree with all these 4 measures as ways to evaluate a strategy, I think for me, the kind of like at the top level, even before getting into these specifics, is what we are doing really creating some level of value for our clients or community. And I think kind of that underlies our at least approach and decision making, because we want to know we're doing good, and not just in a humanitarian sense, but we're actually creating something that will move companies, communities, and clients forward in whatever way they are operating. That's just my personal feeling, and the kind of like how our company and organization operates, before we even get to kind of these next measures.
I love that, Janice. I think that's a really good criteria to include for all of us. But to Janice's point, it's like, think about the criteria that matters for your organization, your group. So Janice, building upon that, can you think of a potential strategy that you would evaluate against that would work well in one or a few or all of the worlds? It can be super high level.
Okay, if I were to like kind of like spitball it here, we kind of, because our team has very different viewpoints, some people are coming from the product view, some people are thinking more from the operational side of things. I think as a team, we would come together and at least start with an ideation session in terms of like, 1, how does this work in terms of like a process for our team? But then 2, like, how does it affect each of the stakeholders within our network? So it's clients, it's internal teams, it's for the community at large. And I think from there, we would start breaking it down to like what these looks like and what we would need to action before we kind of like move forward with whatever the project is that we're working on. That's kind of how we've been assessing it, and maybe not so in a structured way, but it's kind of evolved in that way, especially over the last few months as we assess AI tooling in our business and coming to the market with products that actually will support our clients in their goals.
Yeah, that makes sense. You're taking more like a systems design approach to how does all these networks connect, impact one another, and flow through one another. And I think that's a really important way to look at it as well. So thank you for sharing that. And Nadia, you wrote, I think organization will need to reflect and even redefine what growth and progress looks like in the age of AI. Asking questions like, who is the AI benefiting and at what cost? Yeah, that's also a really good point, Nadia. It's like, okay, how we measure growth and progress today is going to change. So like, what is that? And what is a strategy that can help us meet those needs of the future? Really good point. Anyone else before we move on? No, well, these are some really great initial thoughts. And usually this is done through a lot longer period than like a 45-minute session. So I'm very impressed how quickly we're able to think about this and brainstorm in such a short period of time. I think it clearly shows the audience today have thought about this and put some thinking into it. So that's awesome. So to wrap things up, and before we move to Q&A, the truth is we can't predict the winning strategy. Risk is real. The future is uncertain, and scenarios, they can articulate risk, but they cannot reduce it to zero. Nor can they eliminate uncertainty, right? So rather than claiming to have identified a foolproof route from scenario to strategy, we want to talk about it in a way that scenarios stimulate this strategic conversation. It's about the conversation and how we talk about the future. So I want you to leverage this framework, this way of thinking, to change the way you talk about our futures with your team and your organization. Be the leaders that can bring this mindset shift when it comes to futures planning. And hopefully, I want you to feel empowered that you can shape the future towards the preferred future as well. Not just plausible what's going to happen, but like, what is the future that we want? If there are all these different implications, how do we push towards, if what we want is scenario 1 over scenario 2, how do we push towards that? And to Janice's point, maybe we include different ways of evaluating so we can get to that future. All right. Well, thank you everyone so much. That's it for our presentation. And we will open it up for Q&A for both my session and Steven's session as well.
So do we just sort of say it out loud, or do we type the questions on?
Feel free to unmute yourself, whatever you prefer, everyone.
Right. I try my best to ask questions that I feel like other people might ask. So I am curious, where do you, and I guess Stephen can also get on this, where do you fit in that paradigm? What do you think is the most likely solution? Because or outcome? Because personally, I don't think I think all those extremes are kind of unlikely given that open source exists and major companies exist and AI is out there. So it's kind of hard to feel what axiom we're gonna head towards in the aggregate.
Yeah, Stephen, why don't you go first? I talked a
I
lot.
will. I will. Let's keep in mind our governments can barely keep the subways running. Okay, so while they're all going to clamp down on AI, we've got senators in the U.S. Senate who are using slide rules still. So I think. For the short term, it's the tech bros and the technology running out ahead of us. But the societal risk and changes are real. And back to what Jenny was just talking about, we all need to be hands-on. We should be more engaged. There's a wonderful organization called the Human Feedback Federation, run by Elena Unisov, and I've joined other organizations like this, where the human feedback on AI is being factored in. I think it's super important. Our political system is not set up yet for this, and we shouldn't be waiting for a disaster to kind of kick us all into high gear. I know that sounds kind of alarmist, but that's why I think basic foundational AI literacy is important for marketers or non-marketers. And to go back to what Jenny was saying about these strategies in the future, if we are engaged in the future, at least we have our feeling on and getting some input on it. Giving it completely to someone else is not what we should be doing. It's too much of an important revolution.
That's a really good, empowering point, Stephen. And an Arman, and to build on Stephen's point and maybe push back a bit about, well, the future seems maybe a little more clear because our government, they can't even get the subway running, very true, or the open source is already prevalent. I think the current political climate globally can create a lot of unexpected changes, right? I think
Yeah.
Donald Trump being in power right now, what we think of as our typical government or how they move, I think that can really change, and it is changing. Regardless of your political stance, the fact that something super drastic can happen, or or the rise of authoritarianism in our world today, just globally, right? How government's way of dealing with power and the say that they can have. And exactly, Armin. We are in a higher uncertainty age. And because of that, what we know to be true today, how open source works, all that, I do think because of this in heightened uncertainty right now, it really could happen in a way that we're not thinking about. And that's why I think it's important to be thinking about, hopefully not the worst, but what happens when we live in a military controlled world. I hope that's not true. And the whole point of this exercise is to help us not get to that future, right?
Right.
But so I do think, where do I stand to answer your question? I want to work towards the preferred future, but there's part of me that I think that scary future is also very possible.
No, I totally agree. And whenever I talk about open source being out there, I do things, I base that assumption off of what's present now. I sort of do an inductive approach to my forecast for the future, where it's what can't happen. And a lot of people who are defensive against AI in artistry are we should ban stable diffusion, and it's you can't. It's on a million computers.
Yeah.
There will never be a world where this isn't available to the public. What can the future look like with that as a firm fact? And so when I say open source will always be there, I mean they're not going to ungit repo llama CPP. That'll always be
Right.
there. And so
Yeah.
and so it is a question of where's the trajectory in aggregate. And the thing is it's always going to be messy. As much as the world outside of AI is a messy, uncertain space. And so I think to Stephen's point, personal preparation is key. It looks like there's going to be wind. Get your kite ready, but also have a tornado cellar. Just be prepared. Yeah.
Well, and also I've been speaking to a lot of really, really smart marketers, and Fab Dolan has been a mentor of mine, even though he's much younger than me for years. And we had a conversation recently about slop and just the idea of just marketers just producing tons of creative and filling the internet with and that is not something to be advised. I think brands will shoot themselves in the foot with this too, and it's happening to some degree. But there are some brands doing some amazing things with AI. I saw an amazing case study from the UK where it was a South American bakery chain, and they did in-store signage, and they did 6,400 pieces of creative in 48 hours that was customized for the location. Would have never been possible without AI. And it was actually very slick and very well done. So I think the devil's in the details with that, but simply just pumping out endless creative executions because the tools give you capability is not advised.
Yeah, it's a good point. Just reading some more questions and comments here. Janice, I love the way you put maybe it's less about AI tech revolution, more about getting people comfortable with change and strengthening resilience. I think that's a good strategy mindset to have, actually. I think it's how do we survive in this world is maybe less about like keeping up with AI, which it is, but it's like, oh, maybe the ones who win is who know how to get your audience, people, stakeholders comfortable with change and lead them on through the change and that resilience piece. So I love that way of thinking. And I think there was a question from Jing, will AI revolutionize marketing, or marketing will become even stronger or even prominent area in business overall speaking? That's so interesting. It's sort of like what Stephen and Armand said before. I kind of see it as marketing is not going to go away because of AI, right? I think there is something fundamentally human about the way we want to market, how we want to talk about a service, how we want to provide things. That's not going to change. How we do that, I do think, is going to change a lot. And there's many different ways what we just talked about. So yeah, so I think it could be more prominent, but I think core of it, I think will stand true. I think like a classic marketing 101 line. I still remember this from literally my like first year marketing undergrad course is like, we're not selling a jar of cream, but we're selling hope, right? And I think our kind of this need to talk about that hope piece will never go away. How we go about that, I think it'll be interesting. Do you want to add anything to that, to Stephen?
I agree, and that's why I love how the AMA put this together, with the title of the week being "The Future of Marketing is / AI Human," because I'm a hopeless optimist in this, but I think AI is going to empower our humanity in the long run, right? It'll make being human even more precious and profound. That sounds so, Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm, but the reality of it is, we need to view these tools to improve our lives and improve civilization, not just simply to, figure out a way to make more bucks and sell more jars of cream. So that's why, again, I think basic literacy and basic knowledge of AI is important at all ages. I mean, you can make a very good argument that the CEOs are like the last ones to the table in some ways here in this. The same way in the digital revolution of the 90s, whereas the dog started to wag the tail. But I do think marketing is not going to go away. It's just it should improve with AI rather than just do more of it.
All right. And then we have one more. As brands increasingly embrace AI, I see the future of marketing as a thoughtful blend of tech innovation and genuine human engagement, using AI to enhance and not overshadow the authentic connections that truly drive brand engagement and loyalty. Yeah, I think that's the future we want. And to Stephen's point, I think we need to work on it so that AI doesn't overshadow, because I think that could be a potential possibility if we let it. So I think it's our responsibility to think about a future where it doesn't go that way as well. All right, if that's it, and then one more from Greg. I see AI as a tool to help with consistency and a tool to enable leapfrogging, help access learnings from the past, and focus energy on unlocking new learning versus relearning.
Also, I know we touched on this briefly, But there's a huge amount of digital ad fraud in most media spends. It's a significant issue, and I actually think AI. I was talking to Mo and who presented yesterday recently about media trends with Sarah Thompson, and both of them agree that maybe AI can help reduce the digital ad fraud, so brands get actually more buck for their media spend with real, not just like racks of bot phones somewhere in a gulag in Russia just grinding away. You know what I mean? So we have to look at all aspects of marketing and AI, the good, the bad, and the emerging.
Yeah, for sure. Max, did you unmute to add something or just close things off?
Close things off if you don't have any more questions in the room. Looks like not. Well, a huge thank you to Jenny and Steven for this fantastic session, for sharing your perspective on AI and your expertise. You work with it closer than many of us. And most importantly, for introducing us to the scenario development process. My personal opinion, I think, when it comes to research or strategy, anyone who works in strategy, both 2x2 and wind tunneling can be highly instrumental in your work. So thank you for that as well. Jenny's great point about female representation. In fact, all our virtual session speakers and AI experts on Thursday are women. So I can't wait to introduce them to you. Stay tuned. To all our participants, this recording will be available at the end of the day, so feel free to connect back into the participant hub and access those videos or share with your friends in case they couldn't join us today. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's session. It was very practical, very insightful, and I'm sure you have something to share more. So please share your feedback and key takeaways with us directly on LinkedIn, or share your overall impression about the conference using Marketing Leadership Week hashtag. Your insights can help others discover and benefit from these discussions. It can also help us learn as we apply those learnings into the future conferences. And the future seems to be bright based on what I've seen and heard so far. Before you go, quick reminder about tomorrow's session, Empowered CMO Day, which will be held in person. So I'll remind that tomorrow's session will be held in person. I know there was some confusion in terms of which sessions are virtual and which sessions are in person. So we'll see you face-to-face tomorrow at Bram and Bluma Apple Salon at the Toronto Reference Library. It's an intersection of Yonge and Bloor Street, from 12:30 p.m. when the registration will start to 7:30 p.m. So we'll be there for the whole day. We'll look forward to seeing you there for the entire afternoon. There'll be talks, there will be discussions, there will be panels, and there's going to be a lot of networking. Once again, thank you, Jenny and Steven, for this fantastic session, and thank you all for participating, and have a fantastic day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.